Hello and welcome back. Today we're going to make my absolute favorite cake recipe. I'm going to do chocolate cupcakes with chocolate frosting. So we're going to mix all of the dry ingredients together. That's 2 cups of sugar. And the next is 3 cups of flour, but obviously there's not enough in this very small container. I should probably move that into a larger container because I feel like I'm run out of flour every single time I bake. That's okay though. I always have more on hand, usually. So we're doing 3 cups of flour. Next is 6 tablespoons of cocoa powder. Two teaspoons of baking soda. And 1 teaspoon salt. I'll just give those a little mix together so they're evenly incorporated. And then I'm going to add all of my wet ingredients into that Pyrex bowl you see in the background. Oops, made a little mess. So we've got 2 cups of cold water in there, and I'll get this fly out real quick. And then we're going to add 2/3 cup salad oil. And I love using the Pyrex because then I don't have to get another measuring cup dirty. To that we'll add 2 tablespoons of apple cider vinegar. And the recipe calls for 2 tablespoons of vanilla, but this homemade vanilla I have is really potent, so I usually use about half, which would be 1 tablespoon. And then we'll add the wet ingredients to the dry ingredients all at once and mix until it's incorporated. It's kind of hard to gauge how much to mix it. I always have trouble with this, but you want it to be mixed well so there's no chunks of flour floating around, but you don't want to mix it too much because this recipe does not use butter or eggs or milk. It's actually a vegan cake by design. And what makes it rise is the baking soda and vinegar. So if you mix it too much, you kind of you get rid of all those bubbles that you need to make the cakes rise. Since I'm doing cupcakes, I'm using a measuring cup to help make it a little easier to add the batter into the cupcake papers. Works pretty well. I did make a few drips, but that always happens. These will bake at 350 degrees for 20 minutes. And when it comes out, check it with a toothpick just to make sure it comes out clean. This chocolate icing recipe is just the one that's on the Hershey's Cocoa Box, so it's really easy to find. First, we're going to add 1/2 cup of melted butter to the mixer. And then I'm going to sift in my 2/3 cup of cocoa powder. I find that sifting it really helps make it smooth when you mix it with the melted butter. If you don't, the icing can come out kind of chunky, and that's not really the consistency that you want ever in icing. I just tap the bowl a few times to try and get that cocoa powder from the edges of the bowl to the center, and then always scrape down with a spatula just to make sure that we get this fully incorporated before we add the rest of our ingredients. Now we're going to add 3 cups of powdered sugar and 1/3 cup of milk. I usually do this alternating, so 1 cup powdered sugar, half of the milk, another cup powdered sugar, the rest of the milk, and then the last cup of powdered sugar, and then 1 teaspoon of vanilla. You can also make this icing recipe vegan if you wanted to by just using non-dairy milk and vegan butter, and it turns out great that way as well. And there's our finished frosting. Grab some sprinkles and a piping bag. I used to just pipe things with Ziploc bags, which does work. You can put your frosting in there and then cut a little hole in the corner, and you get a pretty good effect, but it does make a big difference to use a piping bag, and I'm really happy that I bought like a big pack of these. And I also have a bunch of fun tips now, so it's more creative for me to use a piping bag with a tip instead of a Ziploc bag like I used to. And I really like the artistic part of baking, so it works well for me. I always like to do a little test pipe onto a plate or something to make sure it's going to turn out how I want. So what I did here is I swirled the frosting onto the cupcakes in a nice little spiral, and they look really cute. And then I added some sprinkles. I've got these large blue pearls, some small silver pearls, and some white flaky sprinkles to put on each of the cupcakes. This is my absolute favorite cake recipe, and I don't go looking for other cake recipes because I'm honestly so happy with how this one turns out every time. It's just always moist and chocolatey and delicious. I make birthday cakes for my family every year, and it's always this cake. No one ever wants a different type of cake. This is my family's cake. I did notice that in the time it took for me to pipe all the cupcakes, the frosting hardened just a little bit, which made it a little bit more difficult to add the sprinkles because the frosting wasn't quite wet enough anymore. So I would recommend piping a few at a time, adding the sprinkles, and just kind of alternating until you complete them all, instead of piping them all at once and then adding all the sprinkles at once, which is what I did here. I also ran out of frosting towards the end, but I was not going to make another batch of frosting, so I made it work with what I had. Used a knife to smooth it out instead of the piping bag. I had a bit of extra batter that I used to fill this ramekin before baking, and that was the first one that we ate. Now I'm adding sprinkles to all of the frosted cupcakes. Just however I felt like doing it. You can
see the sprinkles bouncing off the cupcakes a little bit here. They made a bit of a mess on the counter, but what's baking without a little bit of a mess? And there's our finished cupcakes. I hope you enjoyed this video. Thanks for watching. See you next time.